pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All members are present except Jim, he was absent with notice, and Mr. Porter Zuckerman is en route and should be joining us in 15 to 20 minutes. I am opening public comment at 6 o'clock. Do you want to speak? If you're here for DI, we have it on the agenda, and I can. Okay, great. And Mr. Parsons, do we have anything electronically?
I don't have any online comment.
Very good. We will leave it open. Caleb, please.
So recently, the Escalators competed at the DI competition on Saturday, April 6th in Goffstown. They competed against 5 other teams, and it was a pretty close competition between these teams. The Escalators secured 4th place. The team has 3 graduating seniors and took part in the ceremony that DI puts on each year. Great job to the Escalators. Lakerbots ranked 19th out of 46 teams this weekend at the New England District Championships. They were not drafted into the playoffs, and the team was on reserve as the first backup bot. The team was then called into the last semifinal match, and won the next 2 matches, becoming finalists. Finishing 59th out of 185 teams in New England. We did not qualify for World Championships this year, but we will continue to meet this offseason and compete at a few more competitions. 14 members of the Interlakes FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America, attended the FBLA State Leadership Conference on April 2nd and 3rd. Students participated with presenter Ed Gertie in exercises about gratitude, resilience, leadership, kindness, and goal setting. Students also competed in individual and group competitions against FBLA students from other schools all over the state, and we had 7 students qualify for nationals in Orlando, Florida.
Wow.
Would you like who they were, or?
Sure, if you have them.
So in 4th place for sales presentation, 3 sophomores, Chris B, Hayden B, and Tyler C. In 3rd place for sales presentation, senior Cole McIntosh. 2nd place for computer problem solving skills was junior Sumner Mills. 2nd in agribusiness was junior Logan Smith, and 1st in agribusiness was junior Bergen Donnelly. From the National FBLA organization, the Interlakes FBLA chapter received silver level championship chapter recognition. Additionally, the juniors are gearing up for New Hampshire SAS next week, and the SATs also went really well recently. Students tested on March 28th with a makeup day of yesterday.
Excellent.
Thanks, Caleb.
Great, thank you very much. Next up, we have the minutes of the March 19th, 2024. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Waddell, is there a second?
Who made the motion?
Ed did.
Oh, second.
Second, are there any questions or comments about the minutes?
May I just make a comment?
Yes.
Chair? The non-public portion of that is in the blue packet, so your online portion is public information. The blue packet has a non-public, which was previously sent to you.
Any questions or comments from the board members? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
Minutes are approved. Next up, we have current bills payable. Mrs. Moriarty.
So you have in your board packet, attachment 2 has 2 manifests, manifest number 3021 and 3022. So we have incorporated the addendum into the actual agenda. And certainly Mrs. Dolliff or I are happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mrs. Moriarty or Ms. Dolph?
Nope.
And go ahead, please.
Only because it's previous slide kind of stuff. So I see replacement uniforms that are these uniforms that have been worn out, like fair wear and tear kind of thing that are being replaced, or is this hey, I didn't turn my soccer or softball track uniform back in.
So that's actually a correction,
I was
so
going to
thank you
actually-
for raising it.
yes.
They
It
actually
should-
bought supplies versus uniforms with those funds, so the
Okay.
note is incorrect.
Okay.
Yeah. But we do have a replacement schedule for uniforms.
So fair and return, I got no issues with, but I think there's
Yeah.
goodness and
Yep.
some personal accountability.
Yeah,
If I don't turn my
Yeah.
stuff in at the end of the season. I
And we
should
can
get charged.
certainly bring forward how we handle that. I agree with you, there's accountability.
Yeah, and just so you know, Ed, when we get manifests at our meetings, which is just about every meeting, we typically hand them, once we approve them, we all have to sign off on them. We try to do it during the meeting, just so you know. All right, all those in favor of approving the payment of bills, 3021, or raise your hand. All those opposed, they are approved.
Thank you.
Next up, we have enrollment report, attachment number 3, Mrs. Moriarty.
So you had, in your pack, or in the online version, there's a corrected version. You'll notice a change from December down to where we are at this stage, March 2024 numbers that were pulled. We lost, since December, 7 elementary students, 15 high school students, and 1 middle school student. So, that is a pretty significant drop when you're a small size. Sometimes January, Heather is going back to look at the January data and the February data with her maternity leave. We had not been able to keep up with that, but just to see what happened in January, what happened in February. January can be sometimes a lease, like changing with the start of a year. But it is certainly a significant change.
Well, it's also obviously not just a larger class graduating versus a
Correct,
smaller.
right.
right.
This
Because
is
it's
a
across it.
mid-course change that,
And if I remember correctly, we do post-mortem as to the whys.
yes, yeah, we do. We do.
Do
So,
you know what the impact of that is as far as, and again, this is, if I'm mistaken, somebody please tell me. It's my understanding that the state provides funds to the school on a per capita basis, like per student
So,
basis. Is that-
we actually, Interlakes typically does not receive state funding. There was an anomaly, but now 2 years ago, during the budget process, we talked about it. I think we had gotten, was it $1.8 million that threw a lot of, made our numbers kind of fluctuate, but we typically don't get adequacy. So we're less susceptible to that than some other communities that are more dependent on adequacy. And the reason for that is the formula involves like your equalized valuations for the communities. There's certain thresholds. And
Man, I
so
don't know what you just called me. It wasn't very nice.
So
The state
at any
has
rate,
a calculation, and we don't.
by the calculation, we do not qualify.
The calculator.
Because we have two.
Well, it's a
Higher
redo
tax
of the
base.
old recipient versus.
Yeah.
Well, and now that there are lots of things happening about that. I don't know where that will land, but right now, the statewide education property tax stays local. Previously, a prior iteration of that was there were towns that were donor towns, that the money left your town and went to a receiver town. They changed it so that's why you have on a property bill, you have your local tax and your statewide education property tax. But that money right now stays locally. There is a lot of, I think, I don't know if it's discussion or legislation, but there is talk about that changing
I
again.
think it's still in the education committee, along with an increase to the adequacy and an increase to the special education support, but we don't receive any of those things. The one that would impact us would be this statewide, what's it called? It's something like
Education
SWAT
property.
or SWIFT or,
Yes,
and
SWAT.
there's an acronym to it, but
Yeah.
that would affect our communities, but.
So,
Any other questions, comments? All right, next up, year-to-date financial report, Ms. Dahl.
Thank you. Your year-to-date report is on attachment 4. Page,
Do we know what number on
I'm
the
sorry.
pad?
page
2019.
20.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Dolph?
So our availability,
Is the
just over $1 million,
You're just under 800,000.
okay?
So it's that number right above the blue line.
So-
798, 156.
Yeah. So it's available less pending, which is about 207,000, gives you an adjusted balance of about 798,000.
And have we yet to determine, or is that just going to be pushed?
So at the May meeting, we will bring forward, here's where we seem to be estimating, and some things that were talked about during the budget for the board to consider, as well as what percent of a fund balance you're able to work with.
Do we have clear expectations at this time of what our special ed commitments might be?
So we are feeling in a good spot that we have all known special education costs we have been able to encumber. So
But we were didn't we have some outside evaluations? that
yes,
needed to
but
be
we have
performed?
encumbered some funds for that.
We have, and a few things have changed since this report because again, this is always a snapshot in time. And we talked about that today, so we are putting a few more things in. So this number is going to change a little bit, but
But we're not seeing any yet to be received encumbrance requests from staff.
so
You-
we cut off, we
You're
asked
cut
people
off,
to
that's-
put things in by April 15th.
Okay.
You know, things, and then other requests they can talk to us about, but I think we're really trying to cut any sort of new purchase orders off by April 15th.
What I will say is it does not look, and I should knock on some wood, that we will need to have the board withdraw from the special education expenses. That was a concern we had going, into the year. That was a known possibility. I would say the money that you encumbered at the end of last school year with fund balance, coupled with not hiring all paraeducator positions at different points, has allowed us to remain
Giving us a little bit of.
solvent.
Can you explain I think I understand encumbrances, but could you explain it?
It's like, I think about it like you pull the money out of your checking account, put it in a savings
It's
account,
funny if you can.
or vice
Right.
versa. So it's basically what it is, it's tying it up to a PO.
Okay,
What we're saying is that $100,000.
it's gonna go to this.
It's going
It's
to
like
go to that.
restricted funds.
So when you run a report to say what's available balance, that 100,000 is set aside as being pulled to do whatever.
It's earmarked
The
or
POS.
something.
Right,
specific.
yeah, that's what I sort of understood, but when we're building the budget, and this is gonna be, I've been on this school board for 4 years and I'm asking this question, but when we're building the budget, are the encumbrances visible in there? Like when we talk to the public about our budget?
Yeah.
Do we, it just seems like we end the year with a fund balance that could have been used.
So what I think is helpful is in the budget process, you have how much was expended the year before in that
Mhm.
line. So you are able
Which
to look
includes
at
all the
like
restricted income.
substitutes, X amount was
Right.
spent. And we keep those lines, so you'll see overages than what you might have budgeted, because it does tell you the story that, we had more absences than we planned, say, in substitutes. So that is part of the budget process. It's part of the handout that goes out to the public.
Mhm.
So people are able to see, well, you're asking for X amount, but you only spent this much last year. So that becomes part of the process.
Okay.
And sometimes we didn't end up spending as much in this area because we knew we had that overage in substitutes
Mhm.
because there were long-term illnesses we hadn't been able to predict. Okay, does that help?
Actually, Mr. Porter Zuckerman joined us at 6:12.
Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. You got here faster than we anticipated. Any other questions about financial reports? Hearing none, next up, we have the proposed school board meeting schedule. Mrs. Moriarty.
So attachment 5 has proposed schedule for next year. I did speak with the chair and the leadership group regarding considering shifting to 1 meeting per month. Certainly January we'll have more meetings. That's often a given. And February has a public hearing also for the public, as well as, there may be times, we're getting into a hiring time that we may need to request that there's a short meeting to consider hiring any open positions. So our hope is that this just helps us build greater efficiencies within the SAU and being able to find those ways of utilizing everybody's time in a very efficient and effective manner.
I feel that given the inordinate amount of meetings during COVID, that this speaks positively to where we are today as an SAU and as a school board or as a school district.
And we have, not in your 6+ years, in the past, never had a July meeting, and we don't have it on here. But I would suggest maybe 4 of the 12 or 11 other months, there was only 1 meeting, and we survived.
Yep.
And I would just say, one of the things we discussed as a group was that we were comfortable moving to 1 meeting a month with the understanding that there are times, not even predictably in the budget season and hiring and things like that, that there would be times when the board would be asked to respond in relatively short order to be available for special meetings as they came up, and we were comfortable with that as part of this.
What's our notice requirement, Mary, for
So
24, 48
it's
hours?
72
72.
2 hours, an emergency meeting, and the emergency would be 24.
So I would think that we would always just keep in the back of our minds maybe that the traditional second meeting, the 4th, that could still be in play.
Mhm.
Well, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
And second,
Is there more discussion or questions about the schedule?
Could I just make a
Sure.
comment? So this will affect the payment of bills. We typically provide manifests for every meeting. So there may be times where if you do move to the single meeting a month, that we just might need to send out an email, an email, which it's previous practice. And then the board would review it that way and approve and send a response to accounts payable.
The last manifest I could not sign electronically, so I would just
Okay.
like that to get looked at a little bit more.
Sure.
I don't have a printer. Maybe I'm
Absolutely.
the only one.
You
No,
are.
That's okay.
But I could not.
And if worse
I'll make
comes
sure
to
you're
worse,
on my
you can always just reply, I agree with the manifest.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, and the signatures can come at the next meeting.
Okay.
I think it's just as long as there's an affirmative from the board by email.
And to
Keep
that,
it simple.
and to
All right,
that-
I can do that. I was just like, besides like screenshotting this and doodling on it, I don't know what's gonna work.
I'm sorry you have that.
And to that end, if anybody ever had an issue with something on a manifest, that they're sent out blind copied so that we don't have the chance to get into a public conversation. But it's incumbent on the individual who has the issue to contact Ashley ASAP so we can evaluate and go ahead and do whatever. Take appropriate action, I should say.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the 2024-25 school board meeting schedule as presented?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. School board committees representatives. I look at my list.
Your list is,
I know it off the top of my head.
but the actual assignments, not who, is page 22 of your electronic copy. That's helpful.
It is helpful. I mean, okay. So on the safety committee, it's going to be Duncan and Jim. And thank you, I think I spoke to everybody. Meredith Capital Improvement Program Advisory. We're gonna increase that to 2 board members because Ed's a Meredith member and he's gonna join Mark on that one.
Good.
Facilities will continue to be Mark. New Hampshire School Board Delegate. That would be, Ed's gonna do that one. Region 8 Advisory Committee. That's gonna continue to be you, Siobhan, if you're okay with that, because you're in Laconia already.
Sure.
And then, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the policy review. That's gonna be Siobhan, Duncan, and me.
Good.
So I'm still on the, sorry, I was texting my daughter. I'm still on the.
Hewitt Center.
Yeah, great, cool.
Thank you all for your willingness to fill in where needed. Okay, great. Next up, we have the Region 8 Renovation and Expansion Agreement. Mrs. Moriarty.
So, the Region 8 includes the Winnisquam Agricultural Center and the Hewitt Technical Center. So the Winnisquam Agricultural Center will undergo a renovation starting this June that will result in a new state-of-the-art CTE, which is Career Technical Education, center opening in the fall of 2025. At the conclusion of the renovation, the Winnisquam Regional Technical Center, they're looking to transform their name from the Winnisquam Agricultural Center to Winnisquam Regional Technical Center, will offer 4 programs: plant and animal science, natural resources, precision manufacturing, and cosmetology. I believe precision manufacturing and cosmetology are the new programs. Plant and animal science, we presently have kids enrolled in, and I think natural resources is pre-existing. They have been working to develop and refine the vision for these programs, and they've decided to launch a new CTE center that will serve the students of Region 8 and help them to learn the skills that will allow them to pursue gainful employment as they move into post-secondary world. So what you have in your packet is the agreement so they are the receiving school. So they will be entering into a contract with the state. So the state has funding for CTE centers. Some of it is Perkins grants, which I believe may come from federal funds into the state. I'm not sure exactly how that flows. But part of the CTE in the state is there are funds to do renovations. And I believe it is they can pay up to 75% of those funds, and then locally the receiving district would do the rest of the renovation. So Winnisquam is queued up to do that, but they do need the sending schools to sign off. So really it's kind of acknowledging that you're aware that they're doing this. There is no renovation cost to us as a sending district. It's really a part of the process that the state has to really acknowledge that the sending districts are aware that these changes are happening.
How many districts are
8.
serviced by?
Off the top of my head, so like Guilford is part of it, Shaker Regional is part of it, Newfound has joined, Laconia is part of it. Moultonboro is not. Moultonboro goes in the other direction to Wolfboro. And who else is? So we've got Belmont, Winnisquam, Franklin.
Interesting,
And Merrimack Valley. Oh, we've got the list there.
And Laconia.
And Laconia.
How will this change, if any, our numbers?
So what I think we might see, typically cosmetology programs are pretty sought after for high school students, at least and experiences I've had prior. Right now we have 7 students who attend. 6 are in the Plant and Animal Science 1. 1 is in the Plant and Animal Science 2. My understanding from Holly Beaton, the Director of Guidance, is I think there are only 3 students right now who have tentatively planned it for next year. But I would suspect, basically we're sending a bus there right now because we are obligated to do that. And that's not gonna cost us any more money to put more kids on that bus.
Right.
But I would anticipate we will see some increases in students going in that direction. The challenge is Laconia is a little bit more efficient to get to and from. Winnisquam is kind of from a scheduling standpoint, it makes it harder to then match things on the receiving end, right? Either going or receiving, that makes it a little challenging. But I would anticipate, and precision manufacturing might be very popular.
Right,
So
that's what, it-
I think we potentially will see higher numbers for Winnisquam. We do pay is $806.98 per student to go to Winnisquam. And the UIT, we pay $992.13 per student. We have about 40 students at the UIT. And again, that is because those programs are subsidized through those various other funding sources.
That's for half year.
That's for
That cost is half year.
half year.
And that's what this agreement allows the receiving school to go and obtain those funds.
Correct.
And
Correct.
correct me if
It allows-
I'm wrong, Mary, I know there's no action under this, but from
They
what
would be thrilled if you signed off tonight. What I was
I thought it
trying,
was a little time sensitive.
yeah, I
had
think they're
emailed these
wanting to get their ducks in a row at the state. But I also want to, typically what we try to do with such big documents is if the board needs to have a reading month and then action the following month. I did tell him, I did share our timeline. He didn't say no to it.
Okay,
So I leave it in your purview.
what's the feeling of the board?
Like to review it, to be honest. As a new guy, I'd like to get
Sure. All right, we'll take that up in May then. No, yeah, May.
Yeah, hard to believe.
Can you send that gentleman an email?
I
Let
will,
him
yeah,
know?
I will follow up with him and let him know that. And if you have questions, specific questions about it, if you wouldn't mind connecting with me in advance, just so that I can be sure I get the level of detail.
Who was the contact?
So Shane and his last,
Zacharis,
I think
something
so.
like
He is the director for the agricultural program in Winnisquam.
Okay, so we have Dave Warrender and
Is
Laconia,
at
and we have
Laconia.
Shane.
Yeah.
Right.
have we ever found it necessary for a second bus to Laconia? Because 40's pushing you.
Well, we do 3 runs to Laconia. The board did add, and it is in the budget, to attend, there are 3 sessions at Laconia.
Mhm.
Before, at one point, we only did 2, but our interest increased and we are running a bus to all 3 sessions.
So we're not worried about
No,
any one session having more than the bus can handle.
no, not at this stage.
Thank you.
Very good, so we will.
Maybe this is covered within the document. Is there, I'll call it duplication of effort? So does Winnisquam offer any programs that are also offered at Laconia?
At the UIT? Or-
Yes, yeah.
No, there is no duplication of effort. So UIT does not have a cosmetology program. They do not have a precision in manufacturing. They do have an engineering program, but part of it is they do need to be, I think, unique from each other.
Yeah. It just would.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no.
What I will say is, it is definitely going in a different direction because it had been Winnisquam agriculture for so long and had a very agricultural focus. This change does feel more like things we would typically have expected going, in my experience, to the UIT.
Okay.
I think that was a community effort.
Yeah.
In like Samberton, Tilton.
Yeah.
And whatever, they're the ones that wanted to bring those new programs in. I know at one point they were thinking of bringing in math, but then decided
Bringing
with
what?
cosmetology, more mathematics focused, but decided with the cosmetology.
Is there, and if it's, again, if it's in the document, just tell me and I'll read. Just as I try to understand it, is there a feeder program from these, I would think from, as it stands now, from Winnisquam being more agriculturally focused into UNH and their ag program, vice as we change but if that exists,
Yeah.
as we go to a more
That's a
technical, are they gonna feed NHTI or something like that?
Yeah, that's
Why
a
didn't
really.
you join that board?
There's nothing that says we can't have two people.
tells me.
And what I would offer, if board members would like to take a tour of the UIT or and the agricultural, it's, we can arrange that, just as long as we don't have a quorum. So I think that's a great opportunity to learn a little bit. So.
Great. All right, next up, we have general assurances, fiscal year 2025. Mrs. Moriarty.
So, the general assurances, the purpose for them is for the grant funds we receive from the state of New Hampshire that come in from federal dollars. So,
Wait, hold on, there's a lot of scrolling. Where are we?
What
Oh, here we are.
slide?
Page
number?
36.
38.
It was never
Thank
ending and I couldn't listen.
38.
Got it.
So, IDEA, these are special education funds we receive, is about $278,000. Title I, which supports programming at ILES, primarily we focus on K-3. We fund a Title I reading teacher, and then right now we're funding 4 paraeducators to support Title I for reading for students who are not reading on grade level. That's $277,000. Title II money, which primarily focuses on professional learning, is $69,000. Title IV money is $41,000. We typically transfer Title IV money into either Title I or Title II, which you're allowed to do. Title V money is RLIS, which is Rural Learning. Sorry, I thought you heard something. RLIS, Rural Learning, and I can't get the IS off the top of my head right now, is $16,000. And that totals to about $681,000. So what these general assurances are is these are all the commitments that go with accepting those funds. And so you'll see there's, certain policies which we're required to have, like one is about like smoking around children, which we have policies that don't allow smoking on our campuses and things like that. So, so they're deep. There's US code and things that are certainly referenced. We have gone through them and we have practices in place. And again, these are deep. If you would like to take this month to read them, they are due June 1st. So in May, certainly plenty of time for the board to decide to take action. And I'm happy to sit down with anybody and go through them or answer any questions.
Great. So we'll deal with these in May.
Rural Low Income School Program.
Thank you. Add learning in there for the L.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense.
Next up, we have donations. We have a donation from Hearts and Hands Thrift Shop in the amount of $500 to be used for the 7th grade Cape Cod field trip. And then we have a donation from the Meredith Rotary Club in the amount of $5,000 to be used for the Prescott Park baseball dugout. Mary, do you want to comment on these before we?
Again, very grateful to our community for their support.
Is that where we play, or is that a practice field for the school?
So the Prescott Park baseball dugout is where we play,
Okay.
where we have games.
Not the upper field.
It's in Prescott Park,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
I would move that we accept these donations with gratitude.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any other comments or thoughts? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you, community. End of school year schedule. Mrs. Moriarty.
So you have, it is, let's see, page 59. No, I'm sorry, not 59. My apologies. I was a little ahead of myself. It is page 58. A proposal for your consideration that we have students complete on the day that we had planned, which is June 19th, and then utilize those 2 remaining days, one for staff to close out for the school year and one for professional learning. with staff.
Thought it was interesting when we were talking about this the other day, we've only used 2 snow days, the ones we just used,
I believe it.
all year.
It was a very mild
Welcome to New
winter.
Hampshire.
Warmest on record.
Today?
No, the winter
Oh.
season.
I would make a motion that we accept this.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments regarding this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
What's the date of graduation?
So the graduation is the 15th,
15.
June 15th.
We'll be here before we know it.
And that is generally at 10 o'clock in the morning. And,
Prescott?
no, that will be, hopefully outdoors
On the
on the upper echelon of the parking lot. That looks beautiful when we decorate it.
Yes. No, it works well.
Oh, it's been great.
It overlooks one of the most beautiful views,
The
so,
lower terrace.
yes, thank you.
What are we calling it?
The terrace.
The terrace. Okay.
Last year, we were inside for graduation, and because it rained. And I think it was a beautiful graduation, and it was actually nice to be able to say, oh, we can do this well indoors, because we hadn't had that opportunity in quite some time.
Gymnasium?
Yeah.
Next up, we have the nomination of the Interlakes Elementary School Assistant Principal, Mrs. Moriarty.
And that is certainly up to the board if you want to discuss the nomination in non-public, and then afterwards make a public motion.
Deal with this then. Is-
I have no need to go into non-public for this.
Would anybody like to go into non-public about the? I think we can go ahead and vote on it then, Mary, if somebody wants to make a motion.
I would move to accept the nomination as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Mark.
Thank you. So
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
it is with pleasure then to welcome Jacqueline Rohr to the Interlakes family.
Excellent. Sorry we made you wait so long, but I thought it was germane to the conversations. You're a parent of a D5 person, right?
Correct.
Okay. Next up, we have the Destination Imagination. Mrs. Moriarty, why don't you fill us in?
So we had 2 teams be successful in terms of qualifying for the global finals, and helping to represent ILES. So the 2 teams, one is coached by Ms. and one is coached by Mrs. Buskett. And the Orange Blizzard of Fire and the Blobfish Heroes of Asparagus take 2. They went last year. Are positioned to go to globals. Globals is expensive. We are estimating about $50,000.
Where is it?
It's in Kansas City, Missouri, so the same place it was last year. So registration is the first step. Registration is $5,500 per team. The remaining costs would be to pay for travel for students and staff chaperones, hotel accommodations, and food. Last year, the Blobfish were able to fundraise $18,000, which was pretty much an amazing accomplishment. The school board had approved the $5,500 and up to an additional $6,000 in expenses. So you had committed $11,500 to Destination Imagination last year.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be helpful to know what might be possible, so that I think the teams can evaluate if it's within reach to fundraise.
What was last year's big number?
So last year, they ended up raising,
One team, right?
one team was about $25,000.
Ms. Hill would like to.
Oh, I actually have the actual expenses and the numbers. So I don't know if that'll help you guys with what, so I have that.
So that number may have gotten more refined since we
It
met
is,
yesterday.
it tells you exactly what they spent on each thing and where their money came from.
This is last year, or is
This
this
is
the
last
anticipation?
No, this is last year.
So the 50 is still what you anticipate for this year?
Well, I think that our total was,
30,000?
yeah, it was like 21,000. So if you think that probably things are a little more expensive,
Yep.
certainly flights are.
Two teams too.
And, well, yes, so you double it, plus I think it'll be a little more expensive. I tried very hard, Mary, and went on the DI website. I cannot find out if the fees are refundable or not.
So that was our question, if the fee was refundable. What we anticipate is that it's not.
Yeah.
But we have not been able to locate an answer for that.
I do know, I did find out, Mary, that I believe it's $2,000 per team that needs to be in by like April, I don't know, next week.
Oh.
And then, right,
Now,
and then it would be, so I think that maybe that's what isn't refundable. And then, because what we were thinking was, well, maybe we could put in our money, save the slots, and then if we couldn't raise enough money, then we could say, okay, we can't go and get a refund on our, but I cannot find that information.
okay. Thoughts?
It's a lot of money.
Two teams. One team last year is one of the two teams finalists from last year.
Yes.
Okay, just as a thought.
Just as a reminder and for Ed's information, we did tell the robotics team that we are in a tight budget year and don't expect the level of funding like we gave last year. Because we did help them with their trip as well. Do you want to say something, Caleb?
I was curious about how many students are on these teams.
There are 7 students on each team.
Is there one
There
coach
are
on each team?
one team, I'm sorry?
Is it one coach per team or one coach?
It's one coach per team, but I believe according to our policies.
Typically, our policy says if you
You have
have,
to have 2 chaperones.
Yeah.
And if it's a co-ed team, you have to have co-ed chaperones.
that's why we would need 2, is if
Right.
you have a co-ed team. You're supposed to have one of each gender.
So the blobfish are 5th and 6th graders, and the orange blizzard of fire are just 5th graders.
I will say, Caleb had mentioned during his report, the future business leaders, right? We have individuals that are
FBLA.
qualified.
Yeah.
Or for the future business that been
Yeah.
qualified to go to the nationals
Yeah, down
as well. I haven't heard any requests about that.
Perhaps we'd like to give a parent a chance to, not to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
it seemed like a natural time.
Absolutely. So my name is Benjamin Yola, parent of Harper Yola, who is on the Blobfish Arizona Asparagus Take 2. As you know, last year they were able to go to regionals and just states, win the states, and then also go to the globals. This year that was their team goal to go back. They were able to. We host the DI regional tournament here in Meredith every year. I can tell you that the DI teams have increased almost, I would say, multiply since last year for this year because of the school really embraced them and really excited about it. So this year, both the teams that did qualify for states both won the regional tournament here in Meredith. They both were able to go to states. This year, the Blobfish last year were competing at the elementary school level, so they actually moved up a level. To give some context around that, they're not just competing against schools like us, they're also competing against Bedford and huge high schools from all over the state. So it'd be like our football team going playing, Nashville South kind of. So both the teams here this year were able to get in second place to qualify for globals, beaten out by some pretty large schools. And so we would just ask, whatever's available. Last year, I'm not sure the fundraising piece of it, is correct. Because we also did a letter writing campaign. So we sent out 100 different letters to businesses across Meredith and the community. Some of those funds were sent directly back to the school. So I'm not sure if those are captured in the financials as well, beyond what we were able to fundraise on our own. So just here to speak in support of that and also to give some context of, for a small school like Interlakes to have a team repeat at a different level, at the middle school level, now competing against 6th, 7th, 8th graders when we have 5th and 6th graders, I think is pretty, quite an accomplishment to kind of the STEM learning that's going on in Meredith. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was helpful. So Mary, what are some options you could?
So, one option would be to double what the board did last year. So that would be, like $23,000. The reality is you're making then a decision that you're not gonna do something else with that money, right? Like, I think that is the reality, when that gets committed. I am concerned about, to have two teams trying to raise money, right? That's a lot for the community to try to come up with, that much.
That's a concern that I would share. That seems unrealistic.
And
That
it might.
We would get the
what I-
same level of funding for each team. And
Right,
that what's more likely is that we would get the same total funding and maybe more, but not double.
I'm concerned about the pressure it might put on the coaches trying to be able to, between now and the event is, I think, May 25th, is that correct, Kathleen? Or somewhere in that area?
I didn't write that down, but I believe it's right around there, but it's not one day.
No,
They're gone for,
Yeah,
if you include travel, they're gone for like 5 days.
but that's about,
Yeah.
a month or so in between to try to raise $50,000 or close to that is a lot.
If it
to
is, if there is kind of a thought put forward to fund one school, if we're concerned about two
One team.
teams, who would make the decision about which team?
I think that would be putting people in a
Yeah.
really difficult position.
So
I
it's
think.
just like an all or nothing thing?
Well, I think, I think for the blobfish that did go last year, they entered this year, it was their goal to get to globals. For Mrs. Heyman's team, theirs was improv, I think, if I got it right. And they, I think hers, they did a great job. They had to pivot because they ended up with, one of their teammates was not able to participate. So they worked hard for it. And I think to be in a position to say only one team can go, I think that's difficult. And I don't know that anybody wants to be in that position.
Is it? I guess maybe this is more of a budget question, so actually maybe to you, what is feasible? What is doable? Before, we
I
don't want to
think-
commit to anything.
I don't
before-
think you can commit to 50,000. I think that like 23,000, which is basically double what you did last year, is, well, actually, no, I'm sorry. Last year you did
20,000.
11,000, right, 500? Yeah, so that's 23,000.
So then would it be, we can commit this amount of money and then the teams have to raise the rest? And
Yes.
then which team doesn't, that's default?
I think that would, and what I would say, I think I would want to put parameters that it's the parents, the families need to really step up. I don't want to be, our teachers have a lot between now and May. State testing is between now and May. For them to be able to become people who are doing the fundraising, I think that's a heavy lift on them. And I don't want to put them in a difficult position. So I think if the board does 23,000, or maybe you make it 25, make it a simpler number that I think is easier to work with, that could get divided between the two teams. And then it would be up to each team to finish with their parents, taking on really the yeoman's level of the work, organizing fundraising.
So having talked to the two coaches already, because this was kind of like, oh man, I think they're leaning towards trying to fundraise together so that it isn't a matter of, well, this team raised enough money and this team didn't. So I think that is their vision. Will that happen? I don't know, but I think that's where That's their sort of thought right
I'll
now.
come back to you in 1 second, Mr. Porter.
I am concerned that the board will commit $25,000 and that the fundraising will be unsuccessful. And everybody's hope, and I look forward to this being a success. But then it's a little unclear to me from what you've said, how much money have we committed? If the board is willing to put up $25,000 as an option and the fundraising is unsuccessful, would that $25,000 have been spent, or would some fraction of that have been already spent?
So I think what might be a way of trying to limit the risk of money being lost is if it's the 2,000 per team, like do the lowest level first for registration.
Mhm.
I think relative to booking hotels and things like airfare, things like that, we want to make sure that we are able to get out of them, or we have to be at a certain threshold before any of that happens. And I think we can sit down and try to map that out with them, that there are some thresholds that need to be hit as we're making our way so that we're limiting risk of loss of funds.
I would also say I'm concerned that this is so compressed in time. And as I recall, this happened previously. And it would be my hope moving forward that the fundraising would have occurred in anticipation of success and that we would have been fundraising in December through.
So Interlakes Elementary School is a big chunk of our teams. And I think with some of the leadership pieces there this year, because that had been the conversation that we had last spring,
I'm sympathetic.
that there
to
should be an ongoing fundraising effort like the Lakerbots do. The Lakerbots are a model. They, part of being in the club is
Hustling.
learning how to go ask for money. It is an actual part of the process. And we need to, whether it's Interlakes Destination Imagination hats we sell all year long, or, a bumper sticker or whatever.
Sure.
I think we need to develop a process that we are raising money all year so that when we hopefully get to the opportunity to go to globals, there is a student activity fund to draw off of. So my hope is that, as we go into next year, that those are things that the new leadership will be able to take on.
Hang on, Nancy.
Yeah, so I just speak to two things. The number one, there's your comment, that there are some districts that do that. I think Thornton is a prime example. For a small district, and they fundraise all through the year as a school district and through a school. Within they kind of value that programming through, and not that you guys don't, but just like the fundraising piece of it is done throughout the year, not at the end. And also organically talking to the teachers and to Ms. Buskett, last year, us parents as the, Blobfish Heroes of Asparagus, we were the ones leading the fundraising efforts. Sue was great, she was part of that. But we were, all the expenses, a lot of our plates were not paid for by these, we were paying our own way, or it was our kids that were able to get the fundraising benefits from that. And my hope is that there will be connections with the other team made to fundraise together. I know there's some social media posts around that team kind of jumping ahead last night possibly, and so we're trying to bring that back in and say we've done it before, we know how to do this, let's do this properly. So there's efforts being made to make sure this isn't overwhelming. Like you're going to call for one team versus the other. This should be a group effort. And
We don't want local businesses to be getting
What do
hit
you
up
do?
twice,
What do you do
right?
if you only raise 20 or 30?
Nancy. go ahead.
Yeah, so my concern is that future business leaders of America are gonna come and say, we would like some support for, their trip, so that's the,
And the
I would think we could, last year we started with $5,500. If we started with $11,000 this time, then at least that covers the registration fees and then we see how the fundraising is going, and that might give us a better sense of whether they're gonna achieve even with the additional 11 from us, if they're gonna achieve what they hope to achieve in terms of their fundraising.
The memo says that it's 5,500 a team to register.
Right, that's 11,000.
But that's
Yeah, I thought you
11,000,
said
so no, I
50,
was
sorry.
saying we did 55 last year, so it would be 55 each now.
Okay.
And then we could see later how they're doing with the fundraising. I mean, that's spent money,
Yeah.
right?
So, and again, don't know if it's feasible, and maybe this is, a day late and a dollar short. Is it possible to establish a line item in the budget as a student activities fund so that we're not having this conversation?
So,
And maybe it's a day
Yes,
late and a dollar short this year.
it
I don't
is,
know that.
it is possible. It's, again, that just increases the budget. I think that is the reality. So that is certainly a possibility. And, it may be something, again, when you're looking at fund balance, potentially you could encumber some funds forward for the unforeseen.
Well, then you could also unencumber them if
Yep.
the Laker bots didn't make it. I'm sorry, that's
Yep.
terrible. But we're
Right.
not going to encumber funds for registration because you didn't make
Yep.
the funds.
Absolutely. So that is a possibility at the end of the year. And again, it's all about what decision do you want to make and what decision do you not want to make.
In the public eye, it's kind of like the difference between an increase in your tax bill versus a tax deductible donation.
It's voluntary versus compulsory.
Yeah.
So
Putting that out there.
I guess to move this forward a little, what do you anticipate is the bare minimum that you would need at this point to move forward? And I asked that to Ms. Hill and to Superintendent Moriarty.
So I would say it's
Would
$4,000.
11,000 do it?
I would say $4,000 gets us at least to do the first part of the registration for each team, if it's 2,000 apiece.
So
Are you-
I believe that last year how this was put forward was that it was the $5,500 with the promise of up to another $6,000. So I guess what would make me comfortable, I don't know, I have not done this before.
No.
So, is to say, if you could say, well, we will give you the 2,000 now, 4,000 now, 2,000 per team, so we could hold our spot.
Yep.
And then a commitment of up to the $11,000 might be what we could see happen, or I'm not sure if that's right, Mary.
So
But here's one of my concerns is that we might, if we don't do it that way, then we need to access the money fast. That's my only
So
concern.
maybe
We have in the past met on very
Yeah.
short notice.
Well-
We've gotten a quorum and
Okay.
gotten.
Here's what I
and
anticipate.
I prefer not to do that. I think.
I anticipate we're gonna have some hiring that would be nice to tidy up before the May 14th meeting. So that we can get people to sign contracts so we don't lose them. So the Friday right before April break, and I think this is what you did exactly last year. We brought, I think, some nominations forward. It would also be a time to get an update where they are in the process, and what fundraising they've been able to organize or have upcoming. And I think that will give you a sense then of how much more you might consider. I would suggest, and maybe this is a good way between now and the end of the year, at least consider paying the registration fees. So if FBLA comes forward and says, and I don't know what that was quite a look. I don't know what FBLA's registration fee is, but they typically are manageable. That might be the way to at least be somewhat fair. Like Laker Bots last year, I believe the district covered the registration fee as a starting point. So that just might be a way to at least kind of start saying, this part is covered, registering. But we're not gonna give all the money to start with. We're gonna give the minimum that we have to, so that we don't potentially lose money.
Right.
But now go and develop your plan to earn, to figure out the rest.
And is it exactly two per team? Or is it,
It is, so it's, the total registration for each team is $5,500. But I think what we understand is by the end of April, you can pay a portion of the registration fee to hold your spot. You don't have to pay all of it.
There's a down payment or whatever, I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah.
I just would like to remind the board members that this year is not last year, and we are in a much different fiscal position.
Right.
And when Mary first made me aware that we needed to discuss this tonight, just yesterday, I also thought the maximum I would want to do would be the 11,000 to cover the registrations. And I'm not super comfortable with that, but at least there are two teams this year as opposed to one. And I think we can't be disingenuous to the Laker Bots, who, as an organization, have risen to the task and done a lot of good fundraising. So I think maybe a motion along the lines of approving $4,000 for the initial fee with up to the full registration covered.
and that would be
Yeah.
the ceiling of our support for this challenging year.
That, I could support that myself. Mark?
My concern is that if it's a single fundraising effort and we only make it to a level that would fund one team, alternatively, if you had two fundraising efforts, there's not a big community, and I think you could create some tension.
And I think that's what we're starting to hear. So they need to join their effort. And we need all the families to come together and make that happen.
But then, I mean, there is a very realistic, I mean, I can see a very plausible circumstance where there is just enough money that is raised to send a single team. And that's a hideous choice that I don't feel the board has any business
I
making.
think that's something
And I don't
the
know how that choice-
interim principal at needs to then work with the kids and the coaches and the families to figure out what happens.
And I would say as one board member, you know, Charlie's point is correct. It's a different year and it's a hard year and we're gonna have lots of people asking and we have to be prepared to say no for some of these co-curricular activities and as well as other endeavors.
You know, I think Mr. Travell was trying to say something, so I don't want to.
I'd agree with Charlie. The only, as far as, you know, being comfortable with the string that I would attach to that, if you would, is a series of decision points with conditions. No later than this date, where are we at? And that's tied to when is the registration due, when is the no later than time to hit send on the check, so on and so forth. So that kind of thing. And so not just the one and the rest is contingent upon, but the date that the decision needs to be made, the amount of funds that have to be raised by that date, you know, and that also tells everybody here, hey, expect to get a phone call and we need to,
Right.
you know, Wonder Twin Powers activate and gather.
Well, I think that's already kind of, the structure's already there just because of the timing requirements, you know, for us having
Yeah.
meetings and stuff.
Flights
So that,
and,
like Mary said, we were gonna have an end of April, early May, very early May meeting about nominations and whatnot. And so we get an update at that point, that's kind of a drop dead date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To make the decision on the other funds.
So one,
Go ahead, Siobhan.
I definitely understand the concern that's been raised about the two teams and whether or not that creates an undue tension in the community when it comes to the donations. But I also remember that last year, there were families within that team who were able to go above and beyond and pay beyond like what was necessary for their own children and their own family. And since we have an additional team of children with their own families, there may be a similar amount of generosity that does allow them to make this happen for both teams. But I do think to be fiscally conservative in terms of the registration, because we are overseeing compulsory funds, you know, that the entire community are
providing and allowing the space for those who can volunteer funds to do so certainly makes sense.
Yeah, I
Nancy,
was,
go
I
ahead.
was gonna say the same thing. I think, the 3 schools that I've been involved in, the parents would, who could, would cover their own kids' expenses, and then, the fundraising, and sometimes parents offered additional support. The other model was the booster clubs. So the school in Maine, the year that I was interim, we changed the booster club, which had been just raising money for athletics. And they raised student activity funds because, there are kids involved in other activities that are as important to them as teams are for the kids in athletics. And it expanded the membership of boosters, and it also solved part of this problem. So they would be a yearly kind of fund that could support these things too. That's just a few.
And I think that is a great model for ILES to consider.
Mhm.
Ms. Hill,
I'm gonna piggyback on to what Nancy said too, that, typically DI is not, there might be kids who are athletes, but it requires so much time that generally those kids are not playing on athletic teams. So this is an opportunity that is, serves diversifies what we offer to children far beyond athletics. So that's why I'm like, this is a good thing, However, I will say this, I think that maybe, and I don't know how you would do this, I'm not sure, but I think maybe when you say, we're giving you this amount of money, you say, but next year, this won't happen unless you have already raised money prior to coming to us. So that message gets out that you've got to, just like the Laker bonds, you've got to start raising money at the beginning of the year.
Ms. Hill, I hate to tell you this, but I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day because I
I do.
think we had that exact same discussion last year.
And
Okay.
develop a
Okay.
policy.
Right.
I do believe it is some changes that were unexpected
Sure.
at
Right.
ILES that,
We understand it,
Yeah.
and certainly, as a parent, we put a lot of value in programs like these, and then having experience, and I know those kids last year, it was phenomenal. That being said, we have to make hard decisions, and I think, so I'll throw out a motion to approve $4,000 for the initial registration fee with up to an additional $3,500 per team should the fundraising activities be successful, and we need a report of the standing by our next meeting, which will be at the end of April, beginning of May.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion on?
I can support that.
You good? All those in favor?
Wait a minute, Carol.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It won't stop that, but one thing I would say with the fundraising is for a Laker bot to travel with the team, they have to attempt to reach out to 2 businesses. So even if they don't earn that money, at least that attempt to get out there and practice those fundraising skills are super important. And also, I think the community will rally behind something like this if it is happening every once in a while. So I feel like they might be able to get the funding that they need.
It's
I
nice to
like
hear.
your optimism.
I know.
I applaud his optimism.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming in, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your perspective.
Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
do you mind, before you move on, we have a person watching online that I think lost connection that might be very interested in hearing what the results of nomination of ILES assistant principal were. Can you just remind me what the,
Jacqueline Rohr was hired this evening by the Interlake School Board for the assistant principal position.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. To that end, Mr. Parsons, is there any other?
There is no other public comment.
Is there any other public comment here? Chris, you have any public comment tonight?
I don't, and I was looking up the refundableness of it. There is nothing on the site, though there is an 800 phone number to call DI. We'll
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to close public comment at 7:09. Next up, we have correspondence. Sorry, I forgot that one. Any correspondence, Mary?
No.
Board secretary,
None here?
any individual members, correspondence of any kind? All right. Already closed public comment, so we need to go into non-public this evening, so we would go into non-public per RSA 91A3C. This includes matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the board unless such a person requests an open meeting. Is there a motion to go into non-public?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Porter Zuckerman.
Mr. Cordell?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Starman?
Yes.
Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes,
And I vote in the affirmative.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, we're in non-public.
Actually, are there any waters?
There are